Hi, I'm Tricia at Club Scrap, and today we'll be making some beautiful cards with our Ivy League card kit. I've got my instructions ready, my accordion pocket file, my trimmer, and my kit. And your kit comes with some gorgeous ribbons. We've got a gingham here, or a plaid, and a nice blue grosgrain. And we also have these gorgeous fleur-de-lis bronze charms. What I love about these is just how flat they are, so they're perfect for dropping in the mail and not having to worry about postage. And then we have a little bit larger profile brass button. They say north, south, east, west. I thought these were a lot of fun just because of, most high schools start with one of those 4 words. And then we have our cut aparts and all the fixings for our dozen cards. And as usual, I'm going to begin by trimming the cut aparts into separate elements and then filing them as we go. Now, if you're not familiar with how this works, on the first page of your instructions, you'll find a little roadmap, and it's a picture of every single cut apart element and which card set it belongs to. And that's why I have my accordion pocket file here. So the first pocket I'll use for card set A, B, and C. Let's get started. For the first sheet, I like to make sure that I trim the narrowest pieces off of the sheet first. So we'll just make our vertical cuts. There's a tiny little registration mark. It's very, very pale. And so you have to look carefully and have your reading glasses on. And the first cut is occurring at about 7.5 inches. Then I'll slide down and separate this next section. Then we'll rotate, and if needed, sometimes you might want to make just like a little neatening, tidying up cut, just take off a little scrap if you need to. So now that I have my first piece strip trimmed, I'll look at my map to find out where everything goes. So these first 2 pieces, the You Are the Finest and Happy Birthday, go in pocket A. The Thanks So Much and It All Adds Up also go in pocket A. The same will be true for the very next strip. All 4 of these also go in pocket A. After cutting this last narrow strip, I just created just a strip of the artwork only, and this will be used in pocket C, or card set C, which is basically your third pocket. And then the And Smiling and So Proud of You both go in pocket B. On this next cut apart, I'm going to do 3 vertical cuts. So I'll go right through this artwork here, just watching for my guideline down at the bottom of the page. All 4 of these squares will be filed in pocket C. If you don't have pockets, just go ahead and start 3 piles. For the next strip, there are 4 squares, and they all will be filed in pocket B. Now, when I was making these, one of these pieces actually ended up falling upside down, and I thought it was a scrap. I threw it away. I knew it existed, though, and that's where I ended up finding it. It was in the garbage, if that ever happens to you. These 2 also go in pocket B. I've trimmed the little scrap from the edge of this piece. This was intended to be a bonus piece, but I ended up using it in card set C. And then these 2 rectangles will also be in pocket C. I also trimmed away some scrap from this piece and used it again in card set C. And then these 2 more faded pieces of the library bookshelves will be used in pocket B. Now let's trim our third sheet of cut aparts. Both of these pieces with the angles need 1 more trim, and I'm going to be using my ruler and craft knife to do that a little bit later. We'll file these in pocket A. These 2 sentiments will be filed in pocket C. I'll trim the scrap from this bonus piece, and it's like about 6 1/4 inches now. I'm just going to cut this in half at 3 1/8. This is not in your instructions, but I ended up putting these 2 pieces on the inside of one of my cards. I believe it was card set A. 1 final strip to be separated and filed. All 4 of these elements go in card set B. Now, if you look through the pile of all the cards and panels that you received, there's one little piece that doesn't need any scoring or any trimming, and that would be these long, narrow, textured tan panels. There should be 4 of them, and these will be used in card set B. There's a set of 4 smaller burgundy panels. These currently measure 4 by 6. I'm going to take 2 of them, place them horizontally into the trimmer, and just cut them in half at 3 inches. And I'll do the same for the other pair of 4 by 6 panels, horizontally at 3 inches. Stack all of them up and just put them in the pocket A. Next, find these larger tan textured panels. They'll be about 6 1/8 inches by 9. We need to separate each panel into 4 smaller panels for card set C. I'll do that 2 sheets at a time, and we'll make 3 cuts. So our first cut is at 6 3/4. And then 4 1/2 and 2 1/4. That's going to create a ton of panels all the same size, and you repeat that for the next 2 pieces as well. Horizontally at 6 3/4, 4 1/2, 2 1/4, and then file them in pocket C. Lastly, you'll have a 6 by 6 single panel in this deep navy blue, and we'll trim this into 4 panels of equal size. So just cut it at 3 inches, stack those 2 pieces, and cut them horizontally again at 3 inches. And then all 4 of these panels are filed for card set C. We need our trimmer again later, but first we have to score. So let's just keep the trimmer handy and set that aside. Before you move the trimmer, always remember to support your accordion pocket file so you don't end up with pieces all over the floor. Let's begin with these 8 1/2 by 11 sheets of green plain, and they don't necessarily have to be scored, but it does help a little bit when we're folding against the grain. So I'll score vertically at 4 1/4 and horizontally at 5 1/2, and repeat that for the remaining 3 panels. All of these are used in card set A, but I won't file them. I'll just set them aside and move on to the larger burgundy panels for card set B. These panels measure 7 by 8 1/2, and we're going to score them vertically. So when you're looking at your score pal, the paper should reach the number 7 and not past it, and we'll score at 3 1/2. Now when you're scoring a cover weight paper, make sure you press a little bit more firmly than you would with text weight paper. These are used in card set B. Next, find your 6 1/4 by 10 white card bases. We have some scoring at unique measurements, so just bear with me. It'll be worth it in the end, I promise. All right, so we're looking for 2 3/8. So if you find 2 1/4 and 2 1/2, it's the score line in between those 2 numbers, 2 3/8. 4 3/4, 7 1/8. And again, that's halfway between 7 and 7 1/4. There's a shorter line there, go at 7 1/8, and then an easy one at 9 1/2. And you'll notice that 9 1/2 inch score line is really close to the edge, but that's by design. Repeat the same measurements for the remaining 3 pieces. This final blue piece will be used to make 4 mechanisms for card set C. First we'll be scoring, and we're going to score horizontally at 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So nice easy numbers for this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Our scoring is complete, but we need our trimmer one more time. We're going to trim this same piece that we just scored at 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We're going to cut it vertically now into 1-inch strips. So we'll trim at 3, 2, and 1. All of these pieces will be used in card set C. Let's begin by prepping those remaining cut aparts with the angled lines. And for that, I'll use my club scrap cutting mat, a craft knife, and my grid ruler. And I'm just going to place the first 1/8 inch line against the printed edge of this angle and use my pen knife to just separate that into 2 different pieces. And you can do that for the second one as well. Just use that artwork as a guide for the first line of your ruler and put firm downward pressure. And then now you've got 2 separate pieces I can use. With this first set of cards, this is where we're headed. It's a double angled pocket card, and I just love how sweet this is. And it's very, very simple if you just follow some basic steps. I'll place one of these text weight card bases in front of me so it's vertical, and I want you to do it so that the bump of the score is facing up. Next, we'll take a scissors and simply remove this score line by making 2 cuts, one on each side of it. So if I just cut with a scissors, and you can do this with a craft knife and a ruler too, but I find that the cut accuracy is never seen by the human eye, so you can just use a scissors if that's easiest. So I'm basically just removing a tiny 1/8 inch-ish, not even 1/8 inch, slit from this. Keeping the paper in this orientation with my cut on the left and it's vertical, I'll take the lower right corner and bring it up to the score line. Don't go past it, just go to it, because you don't want it getting caught in there in the future. All right, that's the lower right. Now for the upper left, we're going to make a second angled fold. This time I want you to measure from the top edge, the top corner, measure down 3 inches and make a tiny little mark. So do you see the X on the ruler? Now I'm going to rest the angle of this X, which is 45 degrees, onto my card base here in the upper left corner. So the edge of the card here is aligned with this angle. Make sure your ruler is tilted correctly so that the ruler goes all the way to the edge, and you can make a preliminary score line. Okay, then all you need to do is simply fold on that angle, and it will be the perfect 45-degree angle to match this one. Finally, to make our double pocket card, this is so easy. You just take the upper left quadrant and fold to the right and crease. Then bring the lower quadrant up, and that makes our second pocket. And then to finish the card, you just fold this one around to the back. Oh, that is absolutely perfect. Now replicate the steps for the remaining card bases. To complete the card, I did a couple of things just to add some dimension to it. I started with some inking of edges, and you can do this with any color you like. I used earth, or you can use ash, which I'm using now, and an ink applicator just sort of to add some depth to the edges of these folds and to make the edges of the angles more visible. And you may want to unfold your card to add the ink to those edges. Now the other thing I did was use a little bit of bookbinding glue to secure the contact points for all of these flaps and angles. So let me just show you how I did that. I've got my bookbinding glue here, and I'll just put a little amount on this corner fold to hold that in place. A small amount over here. And then if you just study the contact points, you'll kind of know where you need to add adhesive in order to create support for your pockets. So like here, I'm going to need to add a little bit just on the edge to complete this pocket. And then when I bring up the bottom of the card, there's a side seam here that needs adhesive as well, and along this smaller edge. So just add a little bit here and here, and bring it back up again. And there's the front of my card. We have these fun buttons, and I decided to use them to sort of formally create a pocket right there. It's the second pocket, and I'll show you how I added them. Just take a little piece of cork board and an awl and pierce holes right through the button. The button will dictate where those holes land. And I usually keep a piece of wax linen thread on a needle, just so I have it handy for moments like these. You can sew this on one of 2 ways. Oh, I should have noted, have the card open when you do this piercing. Forgot, no problem. We'll just cover that up with one of our little pieces that we trimmed earlier, and then no one will ever know that it happened. Okay, so open the card and then pierce the holes. You can either have the tail of the thread be on the outside where you can make a bow, as I did, or you can have the tail of the thread hidden on the inside. It's totally up to you. Once you've gone through all the holes, you can either make a bow or a simple tie and cut off the thread. Again, it's just a matter of personal preference and perhaps patience. Sometimes people don't like making small bows. I think they're really cute, so we'll do it. And trim the tails. For the inside, I'll find the cut part that says it all adds up. You're definitely another year older. And I'll nest this onto the burgundy panel. And then same for the second card panel. To make things easy to grab, I'll make 2 little pieces, and if you want, you can go ahead and just trim all the little pieces this length. You can either put this on the right edge or centered on these panels, and I'll just mini staple the folded ribbon onto this to give you kind of a indication that this is where you remove the panels from the pockets. So happy birthday goes in the second one, and all adds up goes in the first, and it positions just at an angle so you can read it as well. And then, as I mentioned on the inside, we'll go ahead and add this bonus piece here to cover up my little mistake. It gives you a spot to write a sentiment at the inside as well. Card set B is very straightforward. Let's take one of our burgundy panels and we'll simply fold it in half. And as a reminder, even though we're folding this exactly in half and we've scored it, I'm still going to always make sure that my corners are aligned well before I start making my final crease. Next, if you want to go right ahead and add one of these smaller tan panels to the card base. You've trimmed a pretty long length. This is about 13 inches, 14 inches. Make a loop with it. You can have uneven ends, which I think looks the best. And then just place this on the card so that the ribbon will lay flat when it's being mailed. And then tape that right into place. Next, you can attach the 2 sentiments to the front of the card. And in my original sample, I used foam adhesive, but you can also just use your standard adhesive as well. So this is the congratulations one. Then on the inside, we'll add enjoy this amazing achievement. So this can be for anything. Any add a girl or add a boy. Very nice though for a masculine card selection. For the horizontal card, you'll start with a base and a panel, of course, but do not adhere the panel until you've attached all of the parts and pieces to the panel. So we'll set the card base aside, and we have 3 different elements we'll be adding. We've got a narrow piece, a medium-sized piece, and a wide piece. Now on this narrow, I chose to just do a little extra something special. I'm adding a length of this sweet, really pretty ribbon, and I'm just cutting it longer than the panel itself. I'll wrap the ends around to the back and then tape them in place. Now there are a number of ways you can go about attaching the fleur-de-lis. And it's, again, with this low profile, I absolutely love it. And you can see there are several opportunities to attach it in different ways. In one case, I actually glued it. And this time, I used a paper piercing tool and a cork board. And I just keep some various basic embellishments handy. I always have some gold brads on hand. If you don't, like I said, you can certainly glue this. But you have to make sure you allow ample time for it to dry. So I'll just take one small gold brad and thread it through and spread the prongs on the back. To adhere the cut aparts to the card panel, I did take the few moments to decide, what is the distance, what is the best distance from the edges to keep all of this consistent, and I found that 1/2 inch worked perfectly, and then you can equalize the distance for the centerpiece. So attach one of the panels 1/2 inch from the right and the bottom edge. The other smaller panel, same thing, 1/2 inch from the left and bottom edge. And that's just using that grid ruler to really help make sure everything stays aligned. I always think I have it, and then I walk away and I look back. If I don't use my ruler, usually I did a poor job. Nice. Now that everything is attached to this, we can center this on the burgundy card base. And as usual, I definitely take advantage of my grid ruler to help me with this as well. I'm going 1/4 inch from the bottom, left and right, and that way I know everything's attached to this long card panel in a level and straight way. Here's one of our white card bases, and we simply need to fold inward on all score lines. So remember, the bump of the score will be on the inside of the fold. And what we're going to make is basically a box. To form the square completely, let's just burnish down this tab, and we'll take some of our bookbinding glue, squiggle it on the tab, and then lay the other end of it flat on there. Make sure everything's nice and level. And the wet glue, as opposed to a dry, is going to give me just a little bit more working time for making an adjustment if I need to. Now, at this point, if you want to create more contrast on this card base, you certainly can by adding ink to the edges, which I did, but in this case, I'm just going to leave them plain. And that's why earlier we trimmed all of those tan panels, so that we have one panel for every single card. Same here, you can ink the edges of the panels if you like, or just leave them as they are. And I have a panel for every single side of the square, which is kind of nice. We didn't just put it on the front, we put it on all 4 edges of the box. Again, when you're making 4 of the same card, it never hurts to just do all of these steps at the same time, as long as you know you've got them in the right order and you're not missing anything. I added to this pocket these longer strips of bonus art material that originally didn't have a home. We weren't really sure where we were going to put it, but we just wanted to make sure that we utilized the artwork to the best of our ability. So I did add some of these pieces to 2 of the cards, and you can see that in the final images of the cards in your instructions. We'll skip those for now. I want to show you some of the most important steps for making these cards, and that is how to work this mechanism. So basically, we're going to accordion fold on the score lines. You saw how I did that, kind of like when you made a fan. Fan fold, accordion fold, whatever you want to call it. So these are folded, and I'm going to place this in front of me so that the first fold is a mountain fold. There's a mountain, mountain, mountain. What I want to do is adhere this valley to this valley. Put a little glue in there. And then same here, I want to do these valleys. I want to glue them together. And what that sort of does is makes a butterfly shape. And that's the mechanism that makes the front panel of this card pop up in a really cool way. Let's set that aside and then finish one of those front card panels. There are basically 2 card styles we can construct, and I'll show you how to do each of them. The first one is with this flap style panel, and what I've gone ahead and done without you is added a score line right within the white space printed on the panel. That's about 3/8 of an inch from the edge. You can use a score pal, or you can use just a ruler and a bone folder to create a line, just so you have a nice area on which to fold. And then once you've actually created this little tab, you can grab one of those 3x3 inch blue square panels, add some bookbinding glue to the tab, and then center the panel onto the blue square. And then you'll notice that there's a corresponding inside sentiment that matches the one on the outside. This one says thank you, and then your kindness is greatly appreciated. So whether you use adhesive or whatever, we'll add this right here. And now this card is essentially complete, but we just have to attach it to the box shape with our mechanism. So the best way to do that, I think, is if you just flip the whole works over. You can use a grid ruler if you want. And then either one side of the butterfly wings or the other need to be attached here. And I do that about 1 inch up from the bottom edge, and the center here is 1.5 on each side. So if I just can have my ruler ready, I'll apply glue to the wings of my mechanism, and then just center that right on there. And that way, I use my ruler, I know that it's nice and level, and the pop-up will be kind of in the right place on our card. So now that I've got that half of the wing attached, you can see here that this is kind of ready to go. And this hinge will live on, let me make sure it's right set up, it will live on the corner of the square that we made on our card base. And that way when it's opened, this will stick out. Okay, so let me show you what I mean. Sometimes in this situation with using a wet glue, just to make sure that this is going to dry flat. But it also is nice to have the flexibility for placement. I'm moving it around a little bit if I need to straighten things or whatever. So you have to make sure it's going to be flat, but also that it will open and remain secure. So as this glue dries. And the tan panel is textured, so I think that's playing a role in how this sticks. There we go. So now you can see the mechanism is attaching the blue panel, but it's allowing it to be flexible. So when you mail the card, it's flat, and when you put it on display, this pops out and up. And then the greeting, of course, is on the inside. For the other pocket, we've made a really clever pocket. Let me show you how to make that. For this, I'm going to be using a punch to add a thumb hole into the right edge of this get well soon sentiment. And the same would be true for the sympathy one as well. So how do I figure out where to put this hole? Well, you know, you can eyeball it, and that's absolutely fine. I tend to not be much of an eyeballer. So let's see if we can find it. 1 3/8 on each side is center, and I'll mark it right on the right edge with a pencil. Then I'll come in with my 1-inch circle punch, and if I look at it from the back side, I can see when I'm relatively centered here. And then I'll just punch a little hole. If you want, you can ink the edges of this. That's totally up to you. And we need to nest this onto our blue square. So I'll use my bookbinding glue, and I'm only going to apply adhesive to the 3 non-punched edges, and then stick it pretty close to the edge there. Let me close up my glue. All right, so we'll just place this right on the panel and allow that glue to dry a little bit. That's going to create a pocket for our sentiment. I've gone ahead and trimmed my ribbon. Now you'll notice when you fold it in half, it's going to want to go one way versus the other. So just make sure you're folding with the grain. I've got the blue grosgrain here, and then I'll take my mini stapler and add the ribbon to the tag so you have something with which to pull it out. And then it'll just slide into the pocket and live right there just perfectly. You'll adhere this to another card base in the same way as you did before to create that pop-up mechanism. I think now would be a great time to take a look at all of the finished cards. So here we are back at card set A with these adorable angled pockets and our sewed on buttons. And again, remember, don't pierce all the way through to the back side of the card panel. Here's another one. This is a little bit of a different style with a really sweet quote on this sentiment, and then a greeting on the other one. And in this one, I put the ribbon in the center. Same for this one. So all the card styles are very, very similar and easy to replicate. And I think that what's best for this card base is the text weight paper that we've used in this situation. Here are those sweet tall cards with the pieces attached with foam tape and the greetings on the inside. We have 2 of those. And then we have our fleur-de-lis attached to the little ribbon piece here, and our greetings on the inside as well. We have a thinking of you and a good job. Finally, we have our sympathy box card here. I've got a combination of both sapphire and mahogany inks on the outside edges of these panels, but again, you can use it without as well. And here I've trimmed this panel to fit the height of the tan panel behind it. That was just my way of using one of the extra scraps. Also, I glued on one of those fleur-de-lis, and again, this is where you could attach with a brad, but here's the thing. Don't make the pocket before you attach it with the brad, or the brad will go through and you won't have a pocket. And do not ask me why I know this. Okay, so here's the other similar one. This one I attached the brads here on the edge of the pocket so I wouldn't interfere with it. In addition to the panel, I've added additional elements from the cut-aparts and a ribbon as well. I had plenty of ribbon to go around. And then our final 2 cards with the liftable pockets or liftable greetings hidden inside. I just love this card structure. In fact, I love all of them. I hope you do as well. Have a great time with the Ivy League card kit. And if you enjoyed this theme and you like the look of this, check out the Ivy League page kit as well from Club Scrap. I'll walk you through the whole batch of assembly instructions so you can make your pages as well. Thanks for being a Club Scrap member, and we'll see you next time.